Are you a US citizen looking to get a green card for your spouse that happen to have overstayed their visa? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how you can do that without them having to leave the US, without them having to apply for a waiver. Before we get into all of that, let me tell you who I am and why you should even listen to me. I'm a US immigration attorney, Lilian Chukwurah, and I help my clients get green cards and citizenship for themselves and their families using the US immigration law system. Firstly, let's talk about your superpower as a US citizen. US citizens have the power to file for their immediate relatives, even if they have overstayed their visa, even if they have worked without authorization. This is a special power that US citizens have. So, if you are a US citizen and you have a spouse that overstayed, it's time to use that superpower. Now, let's get into the process. How do you actually go through the green card process? How do you actually file for your visa overstayed spouse? Well, the first thing you need to do is to make the decision that you're going to file and to start putting together your application packet. Your application packet will have all the forms, all the required documents, supporting documents, everything in it that will help an officer make a decision on your case. So let's talk about the forms. The forms that you need in order to file a green card application for your spouse are as follows. You'll need a Form I-130 and an I-130A. This is the application that helps USCIS decide whether you and your spouse are in a lawful marriage and in a marital relationship. You will also need the Form I-485 and Form I-864. The I-485 is the actual green card application form. It's the form for adjustment of status. So, of course, if you want a green card, you must include that form. The I-864 is the affidavit of support. This is where you, the US citizen, are telling the US government that you are making enough money to support not just you, but your spouse and your household. With these forms, you are able to then file for your spouse to get their green card. Now, here's the bonus when it comes to forms. Because you're already filing the I-485, the green card application, you are also able to include the I-765 and the I-131. The I-765 is the work authorization form, and the I-131 is the advanced parole form. These two forms, usually if you're filing it separately, you are paying fees on them. But if you're filing it with your green card application, there's no additional fees for them, so you can include them. They also are processed separately from the green card. So let's say the green card application processing time is a year, but the work authorization processing time is 6 months. The work authorization will be approved before the green card application. This means your spouse that overstayed, that most likely doesn't have a social security number, a license. Now, with the approved work authorization, they are able to get a social security number and the license and to start working. With the travel permit, which is the advanced parole, the I-131, if that is approved before the green card application, now they have the added benefit of being able to travel outside of the US and come back with that advanced parole document. If you are getting value out of this video, don't forget to hit the like button and let me know in the comments what is the one thing that you have gotten out of this video so far. With your green card application, you are proving two things to USCIS. The first part is with the Form I-130, where you're showing that you are legally married, that you entered into this marriage in good faith, and that you plan on building a life together. The green card application says, hey, I entered the US with a valid visa. I am now married to a US citizen. Our marriage is valid, and I qualify for a green card. I do not have anything that will make me inadmissible to the status of a green card holder. You must prove both of these things before an officer can actually approve the green card. Let's talk about the documents you need to include with your green card application packet. Remember, I said you need to prove that your marriage is real and that you qualify for the green card. So to prove that your marriage is real, of course, you need to include your marriage certificate. If you were previously married, you need to show that those marriages ended. So that's a divorce decree, an annulment, a death certificate, something legally showing that that marriage has legally ended before you married your current spouse. You need to include, of course, your birth certificates, proof that your spouse is a US citizen, okay? Passports for the foreign national, and you need to include evidence of your relationship. Now, let's talk about the documents you need to show to prove that your marriage is real. Okay? This is the documents that prove that you two are not only legally married, but that you two plan on building a life together. You can use lease, mortgage, car note, whatever thing you have that shows that you two live in the same address. So even if you don't have a lease together, so I'll give you examples. People that live with family members, you may not have a lease on both your names because the family member is the one that owns the property or is the one that has the lease under their name. Well, your family member or whoever you're living with can write an affidavit of when you two move together, and that you two are living there in good faith. You also should be getting mail at that address. So, what you can do is have a folder where when you get mail, you're putting your mail in that folder, even if it's junk mail, especially junk mail, because if you don't live there, why would you get junk mail there? A bank account together is amazing because when you have a bank account together, you can show money going in and out of the account, money from both of your jobs going in, expenses, household expenses, your rents, your mortgage, your utilities coming out of that account, right? Those things matter. The ultimate the ultimate evidence of a relationship though for USCIS is having children together, because that is the ultimate evidence, because who who will want to go through the trouble of having a child together just so they can get a green card? That is not a normal thing that people in fake marriages will do, is go and have a child with the person, right? So USCIS does put a lot of weight on people having kids together. So kids are the ultimate um, evidence of a marriage. And then make sure you're filing your taxes, either married filing jointly or married filing separately. Never single, never head of household, because that is not acceptable to the IRS and is certainly not acceptable to USCIS. So when you're thinking about what evidence to include, pay attention to the quality of the evidence. Who is that evidence coming from? Do not get things just to have evidence. If you do not want life insurance or you don't want to do that, fine. You probably have other evidence that you can use that's better for you than the life insurance. Once you have all your forms and evidence together, you should put them together in a packet. Make sure you fill it out completely and accurately. Sign where you need to sign and date. Oh my goodness, sign and date. I say this because I have seen so many people get their applications rejected because they signed, they missed the box that said date. Once you have everything together, you need to mail it to USCIS. Yes, you can do the I-130 and I-130A online, but everything else, no. What I typically suggest is to put everything together in one packet and mail it in, because then everything goes in your file and you know that everything is together. Sometimes when you do the I-130 online and the green card application on paper, things get separated, and you don't want that. You want everything in your file together and processed by the officer at once. Once you mail it in, the next thing that's going to happen is that you're going to receive a receipt notice. The receipt notice basically says, we received your application and we're going to process it. That's it. You need to look at the I-130 receipt notice. Check the name, the date of birth, everything. Make sure it's correct. If anything is incorrect, make sure you're informing USCIS immediately so that they can correct that. But if everything is correct, you just wait. The next thing they're going to send you is the biometrics notice. This is for the foreign national to get fingerprinted and have their picture taken by USCIS. Once you do that, then all your applications are going to be processed now. Until you do your biometrics, your green card application, your work authorization is not being processed. So you want to make sure that you do not miss your biometrics appointment. Once you finish your biometrics appointment, the next things you're going to get is going to depend on the processing time. You may get your work authorization and the travel permit before you even hear anything else from USCIS about your green card application or your I-130. Once you have those approved, remember you can get your social security card, you can get a license, you can work legally in the US. If you get a travel permit, you can travel outside of the US with some exceptions, but generally you can travel outside of the US and be able to come back in. The next thing that's going to happen with your green card or your I-130 application is you are either going to get a request for evidence or you're going to get an interview notice. Some people even get both. So let's talk about each of those. A request for evidence is basically USCIS telling you that we've reviewed your application, but we still need these documentations to make a final decision. If the documents they're asking for is more evidence of your relationship, that is a good indicator that the officer that's reviewing the case may be leaning towards approving your case without an interview. I have a whole video on how to basically get your um, interview waived. So watch that video if you want more information on that. But once you get that request for evidence, you have a time limit to respond. So make sure you do not miss your deadline. After that, you are going to either get an approval or an interview notice. Your interview notice will tell you the date, time, and location of your interview, and any documents you need to bring to your interview, and any person that needs to come to the interview with you. This is important because sometimes people get an appointment notice for the I-485 and they think, oh, well, that's the application for the foreign national, so the US citizen spouse does not have to actually attend. That is false. If interview is scheduled for a marriage-based green card application, the US citizen spouse and the foreign national spouse must attend. Let it be up to the officer not to interview the US citizen spouse. But if the US citizen spouse does not show up and the officer wants to interview the US citizen spouse, that's a problem. And we don't want those problems. So it's a good thing to go ahead and make sure that both of you show up and that you bring original documents just as is listed on your interview notice. Once you have your interview, the officer is going to ask you questions about yourselves, about your life together. I have a whole video on interview questions to expect at a marriage green card interview. Go ahead, watch that video to get more information. Once you finish your interview, the officer can tell you whether whether they're going to recommend your application for approval or if they need to look at more documentation to make a final decision. If they decide that they're not really sold on your relationship, they may send you a notice of intent to deny, and you have 30 days to respond to that with any evidence, documents, anything you have to basically change the officer's mind. And you send that in. Once the officer reviews it and agrees with you, they're going to approve your case. And typically within a month to a month and a half of that approval, you will get your green card in the mail. If you have been married for less than 2 years, just know and do not freak out when you get your card and it has a 2-year it's a 2-year green card. If your marriage is 2 years and above, you are going to get a 10-year card. That's just how it works. Okay, it's nothing you did, is just because of when USCIS approved your case. If you get a 2-year one, it just means you will need to eventually file to remove the condition and get a 10-year one. But it does not mean that you are less permanent resident than someone that has a 10-year one. That is the basic process of getting a green card through your US citizen spouse as a visa overstay. So if you want more videos on how to prepare for your interview, what things you need to include in your documentation, please go ahead and watch these videos.